you just can't get that one wrong. You have to have the onboarding really feel inviting, really feel like this is something that I want to own. I feel like I made the right choice as a consumer when I bought this. Hey everyone, welcome to Upstory Unfiltered. This is the video series where we talk about the apps we use on a daily basis, sometimes apps that we just recently ran across, and just give our unfiltered feedback. We are a set of product designers and growth experts who really just love working with awesome clients and having fun building some of the coolest products in the world. We've worked with some of the really small startups all the way up to companies with millions and millions of users, and ultimately our goal here is to just provide good feedback that is useful and actionable for internal teams, and hopefully maybe in some cases get a chance to work with them. We're Upstory. Like I said, we worked with small to large startups, including companies like what we have today. And let me introduce my team real quick, and then we'll get into it. So we have Daniel here. Daniel is a senior designer with our team. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm Daniel, senior designer here at Upstory. Been designing for just about 10 years. Really enjoy making products that are fun. And really excited to take a look at Lutron. Awesome.
And Daniel, you've been a part of, is it 43,000 startups? I forget the number exactly.
50.
It's a lot of startups. You got a lot of experience in the space. Awesome. And how about you, Nash?
Hey guys, I'm Nash. I'm a growth consultant. I'm trying to get a sunburn here in Minneapolis. So let me know how I'm doing throughout the call. Still waiting on my honorary product design degree. Also let me know on that. But I hope I can bring a different perspective, and happy to be here as always.
Awesome. Well, very good. So today's video is one that's actually really close to me. Lutron is a company that, quite honestly, I have been following for a really long time, and I'm big into home automation. For a while I was using Hue lights, and then I switched some things over, no pun intended, to Lutron switches, and I've started to get even further into the world with their Radio Raw 3 world, which is actually, we have some shades being installed literally today. But I really enjoy setting up this home automation, and one of the things I think I like about Lutron so much is that they do a good job of doing home automation in the way that I think should be done, which is it should be as much as possible invisible, that you don't understand, you don't see that it's there, it just is there, and you can, it has all this additional features, all these additional things that you can do, but from a hardware perspective, it looks the same. And that's one of the things I really like about Lutron. It seems like Lutron kind of has that as an ethos. And so, it's just, it's kind of an exciting one for me to talk about these guys. So what we've done is I have my Lutron set up on my own home. And so I'll share that on my screen. But before we get to that, one of the things we always like to do is start with the onboarding. Start with, what's the initial experience for someone coming into this app? And so because I don't want to lose all my automations and lose all my settings, which maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't, and I'm not willing to take that chance, I'm going to have Daniel do the onboarding here, and then we'll switch over to my phone for kind of showing some of the settings that we actually have in the app. Before we start, though, one quick caveat is it can be easy for someone to look in from the outside and tell you all the things that are wrong with your house and tell you, oh, this doesn't look right, and it'd be so easy to fix it. And I just want to recognize that if you're at Lutron and you're watching this, I know that you guys have probably gone through a ton of hard work to get the app where it is today, and testament to the team for how rock solid it's been. One of the other apps like this I wanted to review had decent UX, but it's just completely unreliable. And so getting a rock solid app in and of itself, that's a huge, huge win. And even some of the work that's been done is, we're likely going to call out some things that maybe don't feel right. But just know that we say this with the kindest way possible, and ultimately, we're trying to give our unfiltered opinion, but also give ways that maybe this could improve. Because ultimately, I want the Lutron app to improve over time. I want all my smart home apps to improve over time. And if given the chance, I'd love to work with the folks at Lutron. So anyway, there you go. There's my caveat. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's get started.
All right. Agree.
Cool. So Daniel, if you want to go ahead and allow local network access, basically what they're saying here is, in order to connect to your switches, we need to have local network access.
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe it's different because you download this app knowing that you're probably gonna have to give access, but
Yeah.
I think, language-wise, it would be nice to have what you just said versus this.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I think they probably have wordsmithed this a ton, but I think wordsmithing and then also just some level of just an illustration here that could do some of the business or some of the work for you. Just like, hey, we need to connect. Like showing those switches on those in that radiating area could be useful.
Make it a little more friendly to hit this continue button. Whenever I see access, I'm like, okay, well, hold on.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I've been through enough of these smart things to know that that's just normal. But you're right for the new user, and it's funny. I kind of figured you were going to get stuck on that one, Daniel, because you and I are built similarly, and the only difference is I've installed 10, 15 different systems, and so I just like whatever, ignore. I know why you have to do that. But you're right. From a new user perspective, you do want to make sure that's nice and clean.
Yeah, branding wise too, like if it feels more inviting, then I'll try to get everything on Lutron, or like the whole ecosystem. Then if I know like branding wise it all works together, feels good to be on it.
Yeah,
I'd for sure.
Yeah. So this homeowner and professional thing, that's likely one of the switches to be like, if you hit professional, they'll probably try and get you like start moving you toward the like Radio Raw 3 or some of their higher end. It was a home bridge, I forget what they call it. One of their higher end systems, whereas homeowner will be for sure will just go into Caseta. So
okay, so pick homeowner.
Yeah. Cool. Get started.
Called my password weak.
I know. And it's a one thing, like there must be at medium strength or higher. That's a tough one to do because it's like, well, hold on. What is medium strength? It's an esoteric thing. So there's a little thing, I understand how someone gets there, but I would prefer to see it, a little bit more clarity on what does medium strength or higher mean.
Sorry, it's kind of annoying.
That's all right. Are you setting up? Yes.
Yes, I am.
Okay, I connected the hub to router. Yep, start discovering. So this is where we're going to end here. So this is their initial experience, and ultimately you won't be able to go any further until it can connect to your actual hub. The one thing I will say about this whole onboarding experience is it's generally pretty functional. It's just a little bit sleepy. It could have just a little bit more life to it. And if you look at some of the competition out there, even the ones that I've tried and have had poor experiences with, they have just a little bit more inviting onboarding experiences. One I'll call out is Arlo. Their onboarding experience, while frustrating at times, side note, I got an Arlo system for a doorbell, and it was bad enough that I actually packed it back up and got something different because it was just really bad. Unreliable, and the UX was just a pain in many areas, quite honestly, which is a bummer because I like the idea that Arlo had. They supported HomeKit secure video, which I really care about. But anyway, they did a decent job with their illustrations. Another one that does a pretty decent job with the illustrations and branding it overall, that's very kind of consumer friendly, would be Ecobee. So there are definitely out there places to start as far as just kind of looking for references of how we can make this better, how we can make this onboarding experience a little bit better.
Would illustrations be like the main thing you would say, make it inviting?
Yeah, it probably is. I mean, there's kind of two things. One is the illustrations. This is more of a branding thing than it is a UX thing almost, where it's like the Lutron brand is a little bit...
So stoic.
It's a little bit stale for a consumer brand. So like their font is just like, Helvetica or whatever. And their logo is just a little bit it's almost like stale medical looking, which works, I think, for the professional side, but it doesn't work as well for the consumer side. And so if they could update their illustrations to have maybe a little bit of color, update their overall brand color to just be a little bit more inviting, I think they could really warm themselves up to more consumers in that part of the experience. Again, coming back to the physical side and like the reliability side, they're amazing. But when it goes to the actual app experience, it's like, I kind of know what I'm getting into. This is more functional rather than like they hired a team to really do this right. Okay, so let's go into the next step, which is we're going to look at my screen here. And this is so we couldn't go all the way into the onboarding because you didn't have a hub to start, but I can kind of take it from there. So I'm going to share my screen. And this is what my app looks like right now. So I've got a few different areas in the house and the lights, and I have these scenes here. I can add scenes. What I do is actually I add them from my Apple Home. So I don't change anything from here. I add it from HomeKit. Similar with schedules, I don't do anything here. Now with the shades, I might do the scheduling on here, but as a general rule, I try to kind of consolidate everything down into one system. And that being said, in the smart home world, the thing everyone's talking about is Matter over Thread. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. Have you heard this? Okay. It's basically a unification of smart home systems to allow people to be cross-platform. So whether you use Alexa, whether you use Google, Hey Google or whatever, whether you use Siri, all of the different systems can talk to each other because they're speaking over the same protocol. And most of the companies have, or at least most of the companies have indicated some interest or some level of, we're moving in that direction, which does mean that for some of them, they're taking away some of the control from themselves and putting it on the third-party platform, whether it's Google or Apple or Amazon for Alexa. So in this case, for example, we've got these shades right here in the primary bedroom, and I can control it from my Apple Home. And if I go into settings, I can see, this is from Lutron, and it'll show, all the different things I can do. So I can set up all my automations from all the different companies that I have within Apple Home, which is kind of nice. But what I will say is that doesn't make the app irrelevant. There are always going to be things that you need to do in the branded app that you just can't do on the Apple app or the Amazon or the Google app, which, by the way, I've used all three. And we're just moving over to Siri for this, and so far I'm a big fan. That said, if I look at this app, the experience right now, let me say a few things that I think I really like, and then we can get into some things that I think have some room for improvement. So first of all, I really like how easy it is to add a device. So if I go into the settings, and maybe it could be a plus button instead of a gear icon, but basically it's you plug the device in and you go to this, and it takes a little bit of time here. Maybe we could have the UX could probably be a little bit, or the UI I should say, could probably be a little bit cleaner. But basically you just choose like, oh, I have an in-wall dimmer. And you press and hold the button for 10 seconds until the light blinks quickly, and then you're done. Well, that's not true. Then it shows like, where do you want to add this? And right now, for example, because I did this, it put all the devices in the house in searching mode. So they're all like, the lights are doing this, on, off, on, off. And so you can easily see like which devices are even on the network to be searched. And you just press and hold, and then they go, super fast flashing. So that has made it, like, in my mind, super easy. The one thing that isn't easy about it is that when you click to add, and I wish I could do this, maybe if I hit view instructions. When you click to add it, it kind of goes through like 5 steps for what should be 2 steps. Because it's like, which room is this in? Which category is it in? It's like kind of branching down, and it feels like it's too many to get the name of it.
A little too broken up.
What's that?
It's a little too broken up.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit too broken up. And the other thing is, it's kind of slow moving between pages, and so it's just kind of like, if it were a little bit quicker, or if there were some like animations, some little things to kind of make it feel like it's moving quicker, I think that would help. Okay, with that said, let's go back, and this is a good example, this finishing setup. It's like, I wish there was something a little bit prettier than that to kind of walk through these systems. And again, this is where I go back between this is kind of functional versus pretty. And same with the I think the whole app could be summed up in that way, where it's like, I think the app is functional, it's not pretty. And if I click on, for example, the main lights in the living room, you can see that what it does is it gives me another modal to control the main lights. 9 times out of 10, what I want to do is I just want to tap this and I want it to turn the lights on. And if you look at how Apple does it, they do it that way. They allow you to click main lights in the living room and just go on or off. And if you tap that bigger area, so if I tap the light, it turns them on and off. And if I tap the larger area, then it goes in to this area, where I can adjust the brightness, or I can go into settings. And I think they've done, in my mind, a better job of kind of understanding the user's intent when they click on something or tap on something. And I think similarly here, I would reverse this. I would say that if you tap on this, it should right away do a function, and then there could be a way to edit or do a more detailed function by long pressing, or having a larger touch target. And part of it, just like Apple does, the larger touch target allows you to view this, whereas the smaller touch target just turns it on and off. I think there's something as simple as that could make a big difference in how that feels. Yeah.
Why wouldn't someone like Lutron just copy Apple's experience? Probably, do you think they realize like Apple's experience is probably better? Why don't we just like copy it? Or are they trying to have a differentiated experience here?
Yeah, I mean, I think in their mind, they probably would say, oh, we have too many settings here for someone to just know what's going to happen right there. And I think that's a misguided, this is just on off. But in their mind, they might say, well, yeah, but you want to be able to dim them as well as just turn them, you want to be able to use this. And they have their hardware switches that have like a few different buttons on them that kind of have that feel to them. So there's something to be said for that. I don't know if that's necessarily, I should say, I don't think that's right, but I can see that might be what they're thinking. But yes, I'm with you. I think they should, maybe not straight up just copy Apple, but looking at what Google does and looking what Apple does, and looking at what Alexa does, they could learn a lot. And to be fair, we already talked about Alexa, right? They have a terrible app, in my opinion. It's all about selling to you, selling other things to you. And we've done a video on Alexa and whatever. I have opinions on it. As you guys know, I'm speaking 90% of the time on this video because I have strong opinions on how these things should work. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's a lot that they could gain by looking at what Apple is doing and looking at what the other systems are doing and kind of following their lead.
I was gonna say, I think that's a good step, but also like taking it like one step further. Like, what was the intention that these companies were trying to do, and then do that better? Yeah. So like Apple kind of took the first step for us, so making it easy to navigate through your smart devices in the kitchen. But living room, for example, you only have one thing in there. And then maybe it might be cool if there's just one thing, maybe you have the controls like already laid out. So then you can just like immediately just go and tap anything.
Yeah. No, that's actually a good thought here, because one of the things that I think some people do well and some people don't do well is they're context sensitive. Based on the number of devices you have, they change the UI a little bit. A good example of that, an app that I actually really don't like, MyQ. So this is a garage door opener. So if you have multiple garage doors in your system, they show it as a list. And this is my old house and my new house. If you have just one, they have a giant button for your garage door, which I think makes total sense. Now they like to advertise at the top here. Let's leave that system now. But, I think there's something like you're saying that this could be context aware and just like, hey, if you only have a couple of lights, we should be showing you a different experience than if you have a home full of lights.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to run through a couple iterations on the UX of interacting with a smart device with the assumption that the main goal of the user, and I guess Rick can tell me if this is right or wrong because this is literally you. The main goal of a user is to perform the action they want as fast as possible, or as easy as possible.
Yeah.
With as least resistance as possible. So even now we're like battling for like one tap. Like one tap is much better experience because now like most people have two taps.
Yep.
Make it one tap. That's like, is that 50% better or 100% better? I don't know. I don't know the numbers in that one. But one tap does so much more work. So even like when you were setting up the switches, instead of having to search for it first, like I feel like once you launch the app, it should already start searching for Bluetooth devices, and then you press the button on the device when you get it, and it should automatically be inside your app. Like that would be super cool. You open up your app, open up the package, and like somehow it's in there already. Like, dude, that would blow me away.
And there could be ways to accomplish some of that. Now, there's a little bit of security concern with that, and I definitely know where you're coming at. Like, but if someone is in the area of someone else setting up a new system or a system that hasn't been set up, and they open their phone, it's like, like there's a security ramification there. But I think there are ways to resolve that too. And I think one of the things, with the Apple HomeKit, a lot of what they've done is they've done like these little barcodes on the back of their devices or on the bridge, which is the kind of controller for everything. I mean, you just scan it and it's just like everything is there. Now, most of the time you have to set up some things in the other app to get them there, but I think it's there's something to be said for like removing steps. And that's one thing, really, if we look at Lutron, like so far I've got two primary things. One is like the brand just could use just some life, and the onboarding especially. The second one so far is like they've just got a lot of unnecessary taps. Just a lot of unnecessary steps. And this to me is the principal offense right here. Like, why did I need to tap 2 times to get in here?
That was 3. You had to open up the drawer first.
Yeah, I mean, the drawers are open by default. So, but yes, yeah. And by the way, going back to what you were saying about setting it up differently depending on how many devices you have, Apple Home is actually an offender of that. So I now have a decent number of devices here. And we can talk about the fact that, hey, I feel pretty, this is exciting for me to have this, right? But, not everyone's going to have a home that has this many devices. And the experience should be good no matter if you have 2 devices or 20 devices. And similarly on Lutron, I don't think they've really optimized for any specific number. They've just kind of put the things there and just decided. Similarly in Apple Home, when I was first setting things up for, a while, I only had 1 or 2 things and the screen looked silly. It was like, what are we doing here? And so similarly, I think we could do something where it just uses a percentage of screen based on the number of devices. So you're actually using the whole space well.
I have a question. Sorry, did you have something more to say?
No, I'm not on that.
I have a kind of a meta question. So if you were to consult Lutron, would you say Lutron should focus on things that Apple HomeKit can't do well? And then we're just going to assume that most users are going to mainly turn their lights on, the switches through HomeKit, but then there's certain things that, as you were saying before, that Lutron, that you can only do in Lutron that make it a lot easier. So what if Lutron almost they just have an on and off button easy for certain switches, but then they make it easier to customize things or move things around. I don't know what else you can do, but they do things like that. That's what you go to the app for, but then basic functions go to the HomeKit.
That's a really good question because I think a lot of smart home companies are faced with that question right now. They're like, what should we be focused on right now? Because Apple and all these other companies are going to make their brand a little bit less relevant. And to be honest, I think some of them are a little bit scared about that because that means that someone can get a Lutron switch and a Wemo switch and a Kaza switch or whatever, and just control them in the Apple Home, and they don't care what the setup was like. I'm kind of doing some of that myself. I'm using a mix of different systems, but I do think there's something to be said for a company like Lutron, who basically can control all the lights in the house, having a good enough system that people want to use Lutron. They want to use that app because it's better than their Amazon one. It's better than their Google one. By the way, I still think it's relevant simply by the fact that, first of all, Apple HomeKit is a small amount of the market in comparison to the Alexa and the Google. And so it's actually pretty reasonable to expect that they can beat them, as far as beat their user experience. I don't know. I think it'll be harder to beat an Apple user experience. Apple's obviously pretty decent at UX, right? But they can beat Alexa. They can beat Google. So I wouldn't necessarily say I would focus only on that. I think they can build a brand that's good enough that if I go to control my lights, I go here. And as an example of someone who did that is Hue. So I have a few Hue lights, and their app is killer. Now, there are little things about it that bug me, these scenes sometimes are annoying, but the way you control things and the amount of control that you have in them is just so much better than what you can do in Apple HomeKit, what you can do in any of the other systems. And it's just so clean, so well done. And quite honestly, it's just pretty. I want to be in this app. And so even though I can control this from HomeKit, I don't. I control it from the Hue app.
Yeah, that's a great call out. I think and I totally agree. When I had Hue stuff, like um I wanted to set it up in Hue, use it in Hue, like it was great, and then it felt cool, and it felt like techy, it felt like connected, and it felt like really fun. And even like they had the answer to what we were talking about earlier with the slider and like the on button, like it was already there.
Yep.
And then maybe if you have like one of these drop downs, and it opens or turns on all the devices in this specific room.
Yep.
But then there's like an arrow down. Now you can, by default, it opens up, it turns on everything. But then you can choose after if you want to like leave it on and off, or it's like a setting if like this is affected by global settings and this is not affected by global settings.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah. No, I think Hue has done a fantastic job in creating a system that's so good people want to go into it. And the interesting thing about it is their products are probably double the price of their nearest competitors. And they're able to do that because their experience is just so much better.
Yeah.
And so, that's a big deal. Now, part of that is reliability and part of that is the app. Now, Lutron is another example of that. Their products are also in that neighborhood, maybe not quite double, but they're in the neighborhood of, 50% more than most of their competition. In some cases double, in some cases triple even. But that for them is reliability. Now, if they were to take that and go beyond just reliability and go into the app experience, like if they could build something that was this killer, which Lutron, if you're talking, like or if you're listening, let's talk.
We can do this.
But yeah, if they were doing this in this level of UI and this level of kind of overall experience, I think that could massively change their future so that people are not, Lutron as a company is not afraid of the Apple and the thread, the matter, all of that stuff happening, and so
that solidifies himself.
Exactly.
Also, I was gonna say, like, it'd be, even if Lutron doesn't want to hit like the whole consumer market, like if they want to leave it to Apple or something, maybe they can just focus on like the professional side. Because I saw like in the beginning there was like a homeowner, a professional, like maybe just make something super bomb for the professional market, which I feel like is still pretty big. Then I feel like that's a totally open space that you can totally capture, totally dominate.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because so Eero, right? Eero is like fully consumer Wi-Fi systems, but they're starting to get some competition from Unify. And Unify is similarly, it's the professional market. But I'm in a home now with Unify systems because their experience is just so much better. Even though this is kind of a professional system, like I put it in my own home. It's easy to set up. I can do it, through my phone. Like you didn't used to be able to do it. And Unify has just been eating up the professional market and even starting to move into consumer market a little bit. Even though they have consumer offerings, because they've built this killer experience. So there's something to be said for what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like maybe someone like Lutron could do that.
For professional would be tough, but if you can get that, then the consumer side would be easier.
Yeah. Going back to the professional side, let's talk about that for a second. So one of the things that Lutron did recently, according to the guys that were working on my house, is they added this this ability to go in, and now you can control two types of systems in the same app. So I just switched over to the Radio Raw 3 system. This is no longer Caseta, and it's the same basic experience, but it's just kind of tired. Interesting equipment room. I don't even know what that is. Why does it say 2 thermostats? I don't even know what that means. And they probably could consolidate this for the consumer. Like the consumer doesn't need to see 2 separate apps like that.
Yeah.
The nice thing is they put it in my Apple HomeKit, like it's all in one, consolidated into one there. But there's something to be said for it being unified between the different systems. Another thing I was going to say is, you mentioned like the things that you can control on the app better than you can control in their app. So with Hue, you have just like better controls over color is probably the primary thing. Other than just the experience is better, you just have better controls over the color. It's like, this is just easier and better to work with. What's this? Ooh, effects. What is prism effect? I don't even know. Does it change colors? It totally does. Some of these things like this, as an example, this color changing effect, you can't do that in Apple Home. And similarly in here, like some of the scenes, some of the automations, like Apple Home or Alexa, whatever it is, like they're not capable of controlling things as granularly as you could in here. So there definitely are going to be additional controls that you can do in here that you can't do there.
Yeah, that makes sense because there's no way you can solve, like one app can solve for every single home smart device customization.
Yeah. Yeah, and here's the experience, by the way, of creating a scene in here. And right away, like I can see one of the things that Apple does really well in this experience is like if you check main lights, it's going to automatically start with the current state. Like instead of just automatically starting with off, it's just going to be like, hey, you want to set a scene, you can immediately just adjust all your lights to what you want them to be, and then say start a scene, or create a scene or create an automation, and it'll automatically be like, oh, you want this light, this light, this light, and this light, and it's already set to the current brightness, which I think makes a lot of sense. There's little things like that I think are super useful.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of it for me. I'm curious if you guys have any other additional feedback.
Not really. I would say that we can do some pretty heavy lifting on the prettiness of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Salesforce.
Yes, and that's not a good thing to say.
No,
honestly.
Dude, I've been playing around Salesforce recently, and it is like a really bad experience. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fair.
But I imagine it's coming from that sort of like corporate experience versus consumer first, corporate first, and now it seems making a transition to consumer first. Maybe not as easy.
Yeah, it might be exactly that. They probably have a lot of existing code that they can easily map into, and now it's like, how do we turn that into something a little bit more consumer friendly? Yeah.
And how hard is that exactly? Can you how hard is it to go backwards?
From a tech perspective, some of that stuff is hard because if you've built a system that's like what people are used to, where you click and it loads, and you click and it loads, and you click and it loads, like that's really hard to get those things to be just like instant taps. But from a UX perspective, it's not that hard to make it prettier and make those loading states just feel less like loading states. A good example of that, right, is when we went into the ad device. Like, I do this, and this loading state is just a bummer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, when I leave this, first of all, I didn't change anything, so why are we finishing the setup? Yeah. But like, if we could make those loading states better, that in and of itself would be a big improvement.
What do you think our business goals for Lutron is with the app specifically?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as we were talking. I think there's probably an obvious like number of support calls is going to be a big one. Like we want to minimize the amount of time that our customer service has to spend helping people set things up. And so making those making those onboarding stuff, which we talked about that, like making those cleaner and clearer is going to make a big difference in support calls. And that's usually during the onboarding. The other probably is going to be like how often people use the app. And I know we talk about so many different apps, and we always have that one, right? Is how much are you using the app? And I think there's something to be, I mean, look at that. They have customized app, which we didn't even go into here. I'm sure there's, they even have themes. Look at that. I'm sure there's something, some form of KPI for them, like, oh, we want to make sure that people are in the app X minutes per month or whatever. What other KPIs might they have?
Well, even just those two, I feel like are pretty good. I think the support call is actually a big one for me because I know it costs a lot of money to hire these support people and have them like on call around the clock. Like even if you could shave off like 20% of their time by a better app, which technically is your money, like in terms of like spending on. I guess you gotta do like developer costs and stuff like that, but if you can save the company 20% of like salaries just by creating a better onboarding experience, like I feel like that would be a huge win.
Yeah. I mean, as an example, now this is more an installer, but like the guy who's installing my shades today, which I think they're done. I'm kind of excited about that. But the guy who's installing my shades today has called Lutron like 5 times.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And to be fair, like some of the things he's asking are like pretty like this is expected that they'll have, some of those calls because it's like, ooh, I don't know how this is working. It's not working quite right. Like some of those things are just you can't get around that. But some of them are like, we thought maybe we could do this thing, but I'm not sure. Is it included in this system? Like just informational things that they could include. So yeah.
For the professional, I'm pretty sure like at some point they would have had like at least 20 of the same questions that your setup person had. Like out of like 1,000, there's 20 people that had it. Like maybe that's enough for them to create an FAQ, like a really easily searchable FAQ. And then going to like the professional side of the app, like making it really easy for these these people going to people's homes and making it really easy to install without having to call Lutron's customer success team. Like you're saving so much money at that point. Like even if it's 5% improvement on every single installation process, like through the year, it's a lot of money you're saving.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm trying to think, like one of the questions he asked, I was only down there for one of the questions, but one of them was like, hey, we had talked to the customer when that was me, right? We had told him that there was this option where you can set it so that certain time of the day it follows the sun. So it's like always making sure that the shade is slightly, not getting the sun in your eye. And again, this feels pretty extra. But our system doesn't. It's like the next step up has that, and our system doesn't have that. And if you go into settings, it's like, looking for something or whatever, you could have it a little bit more clear, like, oh yeah, that feature is in this set, whatever.
Yeah, something like that could definitely be solvable in like a setup app for professional.
Yeah. Awesome.
Sweet.
All right. Anything else? Or are you guys ready to kind of put a bow on this?
We're good. Let's tie it.
All right. So and this is what we like to end these videos, we always like to kind of give some really clear next steps of if we were in charge, like what would be the things that we would focus on. This is kind of short of any information we have about internal projects that might be happening, but what I would do is, one, I would take a lot of effort toward really beautifying the app, taking it from utility, which I think it's hit kind of its maximum in utility world. I think it's perfect there. But moving it from utility to more beautified kind of experience where it's no longer just it functions and does the things I need it to do, but now it's guiding me through that process and I'm enjoying the experience of navigating through this app. And specifically the onboarding. I think that's one area that you just can't get that one wrong. You have to have the onboarding really feel inviting, really feel like this is something that I want to own. I feel like I made the right choice as a consumer when I bought this. The second is next kind of helping minimize steps. Right now we have, if we go into the app and devices, like so many clicks, so many taps to get to turning a light on and off. And I think there's a lot of, just in general, throughout their app, there are a lot of different spots that we could just minimize the amount of steps that it takes to get there. And with minimizing steps, I think it's, you talked about it, Nash, with the technology aspect of it. Some of these steps kind of take some time. And so the concern might be, well, yeah, but we can't do it instantly like other people can because our tech doesn't allow that. But I think we can take those loading states and make them a little bit cleaner so that when you go into something like this, it just kind of makes it a little bit more inviting. And you exit this page, like finishing setup is kind of unnecessary. So those sorts of things I think could be beneficial. And then finally, we're talking about the professional side. And I think that, Daniel, you had a really good point of like, Lutron probably has a lot going, a lot of expenses in their support. And if we could help, set up a really good frequently asked questions or just contextually show someone, what they might not be seeing, I think we could help really reduce costs in that world. And then there are some other little things, but I think those are kind of the primary things. Oh, actually, there's one more bonus one. Daniel, you mentioned this, is just making it easier to set up devices. Like if there's a way, and this would be one where it would be a really fun like skunkworks project to be involved in, is like helping them make it so that you open the app and it's just dead simple to add a new device. Like
Magical.
Yeah, magical. And I think there's a way to do that. So I think that there you go. There's 3 and a bonus. So four things that I think I would do if I was part of it. So yeah. Any things to add there?
Just wanted to say I think the whole app, making it pretty, beautifying it, and like a really good UI UX, also functions as like a sales tool. Because whenever I think of Hue, and we talked about Hue earlier, like not just the whole color changing, but then the app almost always comes along with that whenever I think about it. So when I think of Philips Hues, I think it has a good app and has a good light. That's a great tool just to get people onto the ecosystem. People buying Lutron, like I want to get Lutron because it's so easy to use. The app makes it so easy, and then that's kind of what forces more sales on Lutron's products.
Absolutely, yeah, awesome. All right, I'm gonna have to change devices here, so I'm gonna try and figure this out. Actually, I'm gonna just do this. I'm gonna join on my phone here.
All right, so you got the windows.
Can I see it Friday?
It's literally in the package still, but they're silent too.
Whoa,
That's sick.
it looks like little soldiers.
Yeah. This is pretty cool. I'm pretty pumped. So awesome. All right, well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Peace.